and we'll get a couple of more as the minutes go on. So you're very welcome to today's reactor session, which is Power BI Introduction Weather Data. So I'm delighted to be welcoming back Laura Graham-Brown as a speaker of today's session. So looking forward to what the next hour brings and what we all learn together. Just to give those of you a bit of background into the reactor in case you're not aware. So Microsoft reactors are local community hubs where developer and startup groups meet, learn and connect. So reactors build this community by providing training, hands-on workshops, presentations and other meetups and community events, which are all related to emerging technology trends. So Microsoft reactors are physical event spaces where we would hold these types of sessions, but given recent circumstances, we're now moving these sessions onto our online platform. So getting back to today's session, it will be 1 hour long. You're very welcome to ask any questions you have throughout, as well as dropping in some feedback and to let us know how you're finding the session too. So that will be monitored throughout and questions will be answered by the end of the session. One last thing is that this session is being recorded. So the link will be uploaded onto our YouTube channel within about 48 hours. Once it's live, I'll then post it into the Meetup Reactor London page where you'll be able to access that recording. So it will be posted there by the end of this week. Okay, so without saying anything else, Laura, I will let you take over. I'll stop sharing my screen now and allow you to start.
Thank you, Emma. And thank you for organising and hosting all these sessions for us. I am so looking forward to getting back into the reactor. But for now, we'll cope with virtual sessions. Okay, so today's is Introduction to Power BI. I've got some new things to take people through if they've been through to my Introduction to Power BI's before. We've got some new things to add in, and today we're going to look at weather. Okay, so a little bit about. Let me get PowerPoint play ball, please. Thank you. A little bit about me. I'm active on Twitter and regularly putting out Power BI stuff out there. Good things that I find, etc., etc. I have a blog site called Hatful of Data, and about nearly a year ago now, I got awarded MVP Business Applications, which gives me a nice blue badge and access to go and harass the Power BI team in person, which is quite cool. So, what we're looking at today, okay, we're looking at building a report. And please do ask questions as we go, and I'll get Emma to interrupt me if lots of questions come up because my question window has vanished. I'll get it up in a second. And so, building a report, building a Power BI report. You start on the left-hand side here. We start with getting the data. We then transform the data. I make it into tabular format that makes sense, and we'll be doing a bit of that today. But today we'll actually get Power BI to do quite a lot of that for us. And then we move on to modelling. So are there tables that relate to each other? Are there extra calculations we need to add in? Things called measures. Are there tables we need to create? And then we move on to the pretty bits, the visualizations. So putting the charts in, putting the cards, the slices, making it pretty, making it work. And then finally, we go on to publish the report, to share it with our colleagues, to share it with the people that are out there. Okay. With regards to what you can do in Power BI without having to pay for anything, you can do all of that up to publish. The point at which you want to publish and share your report is the point at which you need a license. Okay, so you can always learn Power BI, and believe me, it's a well sought after skill at the moment. So coming back to the effort that's involved in all those steps that are there, getting to your data in large organizations is horrific. It's horrible. It's my biggest problem in all the clients I work with is actually, are you actually going to let me see the data? Then we move on to transforming and modeling the data. If you can get those two steps right, it makes visualization really, really easy, and it makes publishing it ridiculously easy. Okay, so when it comes to effort, the ones that we're going to concentrate on today, we'll do a bit of visualizations, we'll do some charts, I promise, is looking at transforming and modeling and how that works. And they are the really important parts for you to get right. Get data, I can't do a lot about, okay? Where your data is and things like that, I can point you in the right directions to help with some things, but actually getting a user ID to get to your data. Today's data is weather, so it's anonymous. So it's the good old Met Office have weather stations which produce data, and the Met Office puts them up online once a month. It's great. So once we've worked out, so there are all the stages we need to do, but before we do any of that, we need to work out, why are we doing this? Why are we bothering? What question are we trying to answer? And so on our stage report, we're going to go with how temperature is changing. So we're just looking at temperature today. The data I've got includes rainfall and sunshine and frosty days as well. But we're just going to look at 2 columns to make it nice and simple. How are temperatures changing? What's the pattern of temperature over a year? I.e., I mean, we all know it's warmer in the summer and it's colder in the winter. And then we're going to have a look at temperature varying over the country, right? So my sources of data. On the left here, we've got a tiny little corner out of a table. These stations have data going back, 50, 60 years, some of them. Depends how long they've been there. And they've got a year, they've got a month, and I've got the maximum temperature and the minimum temperature recorded in that month. Okay, so that's what we're going to plot. Power Query is going to make it pretty, and then we pump it into Power BI and some DAX and some things in there. That is only that version there, and that's the one we're going to start with, is only one station. Okay, if you want to do the whole of the country, we're going to have to do lots of stations. So I've got a report set up already with the lots of stations in, because that takes a little bit longer than I think I'm going to manage today, unless things go amazingly well. Okay, so that's where we're starting from. And then my next slide, I don't have a huge number of slides of explaining content, but every reference I use today will be in a blog post by the end of today, and I will tweet out at the end of this session, I will tweet out a link to that blog post. Okay, I will also tweet out when the reactor get this session up online. Okay, so you don't need to write down any any references, apart from maybe remember hatfulofdata.blog and Laura GB, one of the two. Remember those, and that'll get you the references for today. So demo. Let's move into Power BI. So Power BI, I'm assuming this is real introduction, okay? So apologies for those of you that know this part already. Power BI updates once a month. And here is the latest version. It comes out about mid-month. If you install from Microsoft Store in Windows 10, it will update automatically. If you don't install from Windows Store, you'll get a little message like I've got one in the bottom right-hand corner here. Update available, click to download. Okay, because this version I've got here is not my store version. I have multiple versions, it's complicated. Okay, this red yellow message that comes up when you first start up Power BI gives you links to everything. Microsoft have amazing content to back you up on learning some Power BI. So it's a great place to start. There's the what's new, there's forums, there's the getting started, etc. They even give you some samples, etc., to work through. It's where I send everybody first. So close that for a sec. Here we are in Power BI. There's not a lot to show. I will talk way through it once we've got some data. So let's go and have a look at my data. And here's my data. Okay, so this is the Cambridge data. And so I'm going to take that URL and go back into Power BI. So I've copied the URL. we're now going to get data. Now there's lots of sources up here, but the one I want to get, it's web, it's based on the web. So I'm going to go get data, and then I'm going to go for web. And up comes a from web and asks you for the URL. So Control V to paste it into there. And if you look, it says Cambridge data.txt. So it's the Cambridge station. And I then click OK. So it gives me, and it actually has a guess. It tries to guess where columns are and things. And this is where I would have worked, but about a month ago, I think it was a month ago, they added a new feature, extract table using examples, down in the bottom left here. So I'm going to click on that one. And I'm going to go, well, actually, I can see my data. There's my first bit of data. It's 1959. So that's going to be my year. So I'm going to name that column by double clicking on column 1. And I'm going to put in year. And underneath it, I'm going to put in 19. And you see, it's starting to give me help. It's thinking, well, here are the things we think you could mean. So I'm going to go for 1959. Press return. And there you are. It thinks it's got it. So it thinks it's got some years there. So let's see if we can carry on and get it right. And then I'm going to put in month. And I've got it's the first one there is January. So let's put in a 1. And there we are. It thinks it's got it right. But when I come down to line 10, it hasn't quite got it right because it's got a 1959 and then a 10. So I'm just going to correct that one by putting in back in 1959. And that one, wait a second, that one should be 10. Oh, it is not playing ball. That is not what I expected. That is not what I expected. Okay, what I am going to do, I'm going to slightly cheat. And I am going to come to here. And we are going to go for, I'm just going to go and fetch, I did it off a different station earlier and it worked fine. So let me just go and do it off that station earlier. And I will nick that one instead. And then obviously we're going to have to get Cambridge to play ball. That is not what I needed. What was my station I had earlier? Control H. And we're going to put into there. And it's not going to give it to me. My apologies. Let me just go and cheat and see if there's one in here that's going to give me the same data. There is not going to give me one that's going to give me the same data. So what I am going to do is I am going to go and find the name of the file I want, because I have a list of all my stations, which is some data that I was going to use later, but that's fine. So my problem is it's not matching the source of the data. So it's not coming up with the data that I'm expecting it to come up with. So we're now going to go for if in doubt, go back to the station that you have got and go for my station list. So this is the report I'm going to show you later. So my station list here, and I am going to go for Whitby, that'll work. Whitby. I don't know why I went for Cambridge. Let me go back to. So I'm going to go back. So what they actually have got is they put in the name of the Whitby data. Stop doing search. I'll give you the Whitby data in my links. So there we are, there's Whitby data, that one works. So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go back into my report. And I'm going to do get data, web data. My apologies. Is Power BI available for MacBooks? Unfortunately not. Take that up with Microsoft. Lots of people. Just while that's loading. Yes, there's going to be so Emma's answered that question. Can we get a URL to a link to the data? I think I've just pasted that in twice. My apologies. Let me just quickly undo that. Do you know what? I will put a link. There is a link to the data. Is the data already anonymized? The data is anonymized, as in you don't have to have access to it. You don't have to log in to get to it. That's what I meant by anonymized. So I'm going to quickly just do this again. I'm going to put in year. So that's 1961. Let's put in the month. And that's going to be the 9th. It's in the top row there, it's got a 9. And then it gets a little bit wrong, okay, here. But the second one, I want to be a 10. And then it gets it right, okay? And then we're going to put into here, we're going to have a maximum. This is going to be called my max temp. And on that first row, it's 18.6. And then 14, etc., as we go down. And then we're going to go for a min temp as well. And on that top row, it's 10 with .0 to make sure that it understands what I'm trying to do. And there we are, those seem to match. That looks good. So down the bottom, the right-hand corner, okay, I've got load and I've got transform data. Now load, if I think my data is clean, I can just click load and off we go. I want to just check that out. So I'm going to go for transform, which will throw this into Power Query. Hopefully in the right window. There we go. Now Power Query is a fantastic tool. There is a version of Power Query behind Excel, Power BI, and you can get it in Flow and all sorts of other places now. It's slowly taking over. So what going through that examples has done is it's written all this code for me. So going back to my source, there we are at the beginning of my data. And the applied steps down the right hand side are what's written in what's called M. You can see the M at the top here. If you're new to Power BI, you won't have a formula bar by default. If I go to view, there's the formula bar. You turn it on there. And this will, but you don't have to edit the code, okay? But this is taking you down. What it's doing is it's going through all the columns and changing them to do all the right things, to walk through all the things it's trying to do for me, okay? So I get to the end here. It then renames all the columns and it then changes their type. Now this change type is quite important. In the top left-hand corner, you can see the data types. So I've got a 1, 2, 3 there and a 1, 2, 3. They're whole numbers. A, B, C means it thinks those two columns are text. And I go, well, I don't want it to be text. I want to be able to do sums with those numbers. So I'm going to change them to be a decimal number because I've got decimal points. And because I'm on a change type step, it's asking, do I want to replace the current? So do I want to change the type that's been picked in here to be a decimal? Yes, I do. And I'm going to go for this one as well. And we're going to go for a decimal number there as well. Replace current. Now, what's quite a good idea at this point is to go, right, okay, I've kind of done a load there. I want to know if that's going to work. I do want to add another column in a minute, but I want to know if this so far has worked. So I'm going to go back to home and I'm going to go close and apply. And it'll take a couple of minutes, or not a couple of minutes, just a couple of seconds. The time it loads all the data is now. In Power Query, it just loads a sample of the data. Now, it said, when I tried to load it, some of the lines had some errors. So 708 rows loaded, 21 errors. And it gives you a nice link here to view those errors. And if you click on view those errors, by the way, I'm expecting the errors, okay? For once, I'm expecting the error to happen. It should take you into Power Query. It doesn't always get you there. It regularly puts you back into Power BI. So here we are in Power Query, and it's added on the left-hand side here. So here's my Whitby data. It's added my errors in Whitby data. And if I go and have, so don't click on the word error, because that will add a step over here. So if I come in, I'll show you. It adds a step, and there we are. It gives you details, but that's added a step here. But I can delete that step. Okay. For those who are new to Power BI and Power Query, there is one missing part that's not in Power Query. I've just deleted a step. There is no undo. Okay. It's not that I'm missing it. It's not that I haven't found it yet. There is no undo. You delete a step, it's gone. Okay, so be careful. But if I click on in the white space next to it, it gives me the message down here. And if you look, it's saying 3 hyphens, couldn't convert into a number. Couldn't convert into a number. So that's in min temp and in max temp. It's going, those 3 hyphens, I can't convert. So that makes sense. But those 3 hyphens mean there was no data, or there was not enough accurate data. So if I go back into my query, go, well, okay, before I change type, so on this step before, so I've moved to an earlier step, how about in all the columns, I replace 3 hyphens with the equivalent of no data. So I'm going to go with null. So we come into here and we go for Control A, pick all the columns. And then on the transform ribbon, so these ribbons have all sorts of things up here that they will do. They will write all the code for you just by you clicking buttons. There's the replace values. So I'm going to drop that down and I'm going to go replace values. And it's saying, you do know you're not on the bottom step, don't you? Yep, I do. So yes, I do want you to insert step. And it's then going to say, well, what do you want me to find? Well, I want to find 3 hyphens. And I want to replace those with, let's go with 3 spaces. And click OK. And now go to my change type. That seems to work okay. If I go back to my errors now, there you are. I'm now down to 3 errors. So that error there, we've got a star. That error there, I've got a star. That error there, I've obviously got something happening here that's gone a bit weird because I've got a star. And now if I had more time, I would go back through my data and work out what's happened on that row. There's obviously some difference in the amount of space there is. I would go maybe replace those. You possibly could replace those stars with spaces really early on in the data. So if I did it back up here in the source, if I replaced all the stars with a space, that might help fix it. But some of the time your errors you just cannot work out the source of them, or they are just an error. Okay, so you decide, you know what, I'm just going to replace errors with a null. Now, in this case, I probably should go and fix them, but for demonstration purposes, I'm going to show you how to get rid of all the errors. So I'm going to, again, pick all the columns, and I'm going to, on the replace values, if you do a drop down, you can do a replace errors. So I'm going to click onto there. And what value do you want errors in the columns? Well, I'm going to put in, just replace them with nulls for the time being. That'll be fine. And then click OK. And now I can come up into my errors, and I can see there are no errors. There's no errors being put in there. So actually what I can do is do a right click on there and go to delete the group, because I've dealt with all the errors. So there we are. I'm now just back to my Whitby data. So I can now go home, close and apply. That's not what I want to do. I want to add an extra column. So I'll show you how to get back in there. Okay, so you've done your change. I've got my columns here. I am now going to go back into transform data. We're going to add one more column. And transform data will take you back into Power Query. So I've got a year, I've got a month. I actually want to add a date because I want to be able to do some date things later. So what I'm going to do is I am going to highlight both those columns, and we're going to add a column. So we're going to add a column, and one of my favorite features in Power Query is columns from examples. Looking at the questions that are there at the moment, is a visual analytics tool like Google Data Studio program? Yes, it is. What are the main differences? I have to confess, I do not know Google Studio well enough to be able to tell you what the differences are. I can't tell you what they all do some very similar things, but I don't know Google Analytics well enough. I've seen it a few times, Google Data Studio. I've seen it a few times, but not played with it in anger. So we can add a column based off the selection. So it's column from examples from selection. So I'm going to that a column name of date and into here. So I'm going to go for the middle of the month because I know every month's got a middle. And I'm going to go for the 15th, and this is the 9th of 1961. When I press return, and if I go and check, I've got 1962, there we go, that works, 1963, and that works as well, and they all seem to work, 10, 11, 12. It's written a whole lot of ticks combine things, some concatenate in there, and I can then click OK. And what it does is it writes the step for you. It's done a merged column, okay, which I could go and click the cogwheel. So any step of the cogwheel, you can go and click the cogwheel and it'll show you what it's trying to do. But if you can do it from insert by examples, it will write some really quite complicated M for you. So that works. My only problem is that's not a date. So let's just convert that into a date. So there we are. It's got a column name, etc. That all looks great to me. Let's go home and close and apply. So we've now got into our data. Okay, now there is one tick box that I want all of you who are going to go away and use Power BI. This is the tick box you turn off. Okay, Guy in a Cube, who are Adam and Patrick, run a fantastic YouTube channel. In their spare time, they work for Microsoft in their day jobs, but in their spare time, it must take all their spare time. They run this amazing channel. and they do some fantastic things. And one of the most recent videos was to point out this tick box. So I've got to be saying the right things here somewhere. If you go into your settings, and I'm just going to turn it on and then turn it off again, just so I can show you what it does, because mine's always turned off. So options and settings, and I go to options. There are loads of things to turn on and off in here, okay? So what we're going to do is data load, global data load. This box here, time intelligence, is on all new reports. So it's turned off. Or you can go for your current file. So if you're loading somebody else's, it might be turned on because they might have it turned on. Here's just for this file. So I'm going to turn it on just for this file, just so I can tell you what it's going to do. And it's going to add this date thing here. And I'll show you how that works in a second, and then we'll turn it off, and then it'll go away and behave for me. So I've got my data here. This is where we're going to draw things in a second. I've got my data. I can actually have a look at my rows of data. There we are. There's all my data. Relationships. We haven't got any relationships yet, but we'll get there in a second. We'll put some things in there in a sec once we've got another table in there. So I want to create my report now. Let's do some nice visuals. So let's just see some temperatures and the maximum and minimum temperature over time, let's say. So if I'm going to go for putting in a report design. Okay, now actually report design I am not good at. It's not my technical skill, but there is one guy who is very good at this kind of thing and comes up with some really nice ideas. And the method we're going to use from his today, let me see if I think I've got the page up, is in here. And it's a guy called Chris Hamill, who does Alluring Analytics. It's a great blog. It's got some lovely things in it. And he's talking about doing backgrounds. So we're going to do backgrounds on our reports. So on our page, I'm going to go to the settings of our page. So I've got nothing on there. Here's my page, and I'm going to go for page background. And rather than add in my company logo, some bars, some other bits, I'm going to add an image. And I'm going to add an image. I'm just going to have to go and find it. There we go. So what I've done is I've taken PowerPoint and I've used PowerPoint to arrange out a page. So this is one of my standard backgrounds that I would use for my client. Okay, so this is my company background that I'm using. I'm pretending I'm a weather company. Fernando, I'm going to come back to your question in a moment. Okay, I am going to come back to your question in a moment. I will talk about how we're going to do that. We are going to add a column in a moment, I promise. So I'm going to bring in a background that is literally just a graphic. In PowerPoint, if you are in a graphic like this, you can do a control A and do a right click and save as a picture. So okay, that's basically what I've done to create my backgrounds, and then I've resized one to be the right kind of size. That's the size you want it to be. It is the 16:9, and then I click open. If it's the wrong size, you can make it. That's weird. It hasn't come up. Oh, I know why it hasn't come up. Okay, the other reason why it hasn't come up, weirdly, it's got transparency 100%. Let's take that back down to there. And there we are. I've got a background. The reason to do this, okay, is Power BI only has to put one graphic up. If all of these have been separate graphics, it takes time to load. Reports take time to load. People get irritated very, very quickly. Okay, so come up with some speed things to make your report come back up again. Right. So now let's put in a graphic, shall we? So now let's put in a line chart. and I'm going to bring in the date for the axis, and it does this. Okay, I don't want this. I don't want it to do it over years like this. I want it to behave. I just want a date, right? So I'm going to remove that. If you do get stuck and you have to do it this method, you can come in here and just say, I'll have date, thank you. And it will give you just date. But if I go back into my option settings that I had earlier, and go to my current file and I turn off auto date and time, it now takes away that and it stops trying to create hidden calendar tables for me. So I'm going to put that on the axis and I'm going to put max temperature into the values. Now it'll do a really weird thing into here, but what I can do is I don't want the sum of max temperature, I want the average. Okay, and that's showing it in way too much detail, and you can kind of see a very wiggly line, and that doesn't really help. So I want to be able to group my years, maybe in decades or something like that. And I want to be able, so I'm assuming most of you do not want to plot weather data, but you're looking at sales data, you're looking at task data, you're looking at that kind of thing. So you're wanting to I will come to your question, Brandon, with regards to drill throughs, by the way. You wanting to look at things over time, you wanting to see things, possibly you wanting to do the drill down, okay? So the chances are you do need a calendar and you do want to be able to drill through different parts of date, different parts of time and things, etc. But actually, I want to be able to, so I need to better have a calendar to base this off, but I want to control the calendar. Now, there are two amazing gentlemen, another two, we need some more ladies, okay, guys, if there's any ladies on thing, we need to start doing some extra blogs because there aren't enough of us. But there's two amazing gentlemen who I refer to as the Italians, Alberto and Marco. They are fantastic. They run SQLBI, and if you want to learn DAX, they are the people to go for. They have all sorts of lovely books, etc., etc., and they're also incredibly helpful. So I'm going to just show you where I'm going to go and get, because I want to build a calendar. So rather than building a calendar from scratch, I'm going to nick somebody else's code, because hey, these guys produce the code, so why rewrite it? And here we are. He does a lovely little. Alberto does a lovely little video there for you, and he talks all about it. He does all sorts of things, and what he does, okay, is he gives you some code that will create me a calendar. If I tweak that 2-year part, because I haven't got sales order data, I'm just going to put some numbers in for those years. So I'm going to copy. There you are. See, it's copied. And I'm going to go back into my Power BI. And I want a table. Okay, so I'm going to go and have a look at my tables. I've only got one. And I'm going to bring in a new table. When you do things like new tables, new measures, new columns, etc., it gives you this formula bar at the top here. But let me just do a Control plus, okay, zooms in for you. So I'm going to paste in their calendar. Now, the one thing I have about them, I don't like it being called date, but apart from that, it's great. I'm going to call it calendar. Now, I'm going to start. Let's start in 1950. And the max year I'm going to put as this year. Okay. And then this is DAX. Okay. So what they're doing is they add some columns in. They create a calendar auto. So they're adding columns to the calendar auto, which they filtered to the right number of years. And they've put in a calendar and they're creating a couple of columns. Okay. I'm going to add actually, no, let's press return and prove it works. I will put a link to that page into there. So here we've got our columns. I'm going to add one more column. That's what to do a little bit of minus there. There you go. You don't quite need the code that big. All of you are blind like me. We're going to add one more column. We're going to add in a column called decade. And I basically want to round all the year numbers down to the latest so that 1925 would become the 1920s, that kind of thing. So we can use a function called floor for that. And we are going to floor the year 8. Okay. That's not a dot, a comma. And the significance is what number do you want to go down to? So I'm going to go for 10. Put in a bracket there. And there you are, it's added in. So 1980 is in the decade 1980s. Okay, so that works. Right. Then let's go back into, you might need to tweak that calendar in a moment, but let's come back into our one here. And instead of the date across the bottom there, I could go and start putting things in, but I've forgotten one thing. Okay, when you've added in a second data source, you've got two data, you've got to say how they relate to each other. So I'm going to come into the relationships, the model, and I've got a date column in my Whitby data, and I've got a date column in my calendar. So I'm going to drag that date into that date. Okay, now because there is only one thing here, it's come up with a one-to-one relationship. It's inaccurate. It's inaccurate because if I had more stations in there, I would have more duplicates of dates. But for the time being, it will suffice. I will show you later. Actually, no, I'll show you now. Let's not do it later. If I double click on that line, I can say my Whitby data or my weather data it could possibly have many readings for one date in my calendar. And cross filter should be single if you can. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. So if I had multiple stations in there, it would have done it by default. One date in the calendar can have many readings, and the filter goes that way. That's what we are expecting. Okay, there's all sorts of articles out there, especially by the SQL BI guys, with regards to how relationships and how you should make them not bi-directional. So now let's go back into my report and let's deal with this thing, because this does not show me how temperature is changing over time, which was one of my questions. So what I'm going to do instead here is I'm going to click on, remember to click onto your chart, and I'm going to take out date, and I'm going to bring in decade. Okay. And depressingly, very depressingly actually, you end up with a line here. Now it's done an auto on the left-hand axis, so it starts at 11 and goes up to 15, and quite depressingly, the maximum temperature is obviously going up in the world. Okay, so what I'm also going to do is I'm going to bring in the minimum temperature and make that an average too. At the moment it thinks sum is the default normally. Okay, so there we are, we can see the temperature. Now if you don't want this to be being the mean temperature to be here, to be like this, and start at 6 or 5, whatever it's starting at, you can come in to the formatting, and I can go for the y-axis, which is the one at the left, and you can see it's got a start and it's got an end. So I can turn around and say I would like that to be 0, or I would like, or something, and there you are, it's put it in there. Okay, so you can fix these things. You can make it that actually the temperatures will stay, the axis will stay the same. Now, coming back to a question from Brandon, which was, what is a drill through field? Now drill through, you're meaning drill through down the bottom here. I will show you drill through field on the next one. I was thinking of drill down. If I go for drill down instead, just for a second, if I onto this chart, I turn around and say I want decades, but actually I want to be able to drill down into my calendar, my year, okay? I could, that then adds a whole lot of arrows at the top here, and that allows you to do a click on drill down, and then I can click on to, let's go for the decade of the 2000s, and there you are. You can see that actually in 2000, here's an interesting thing. You think it's going down, and that's the first reaction you've got is, oh, the temperature is going down in that decade. That's bizarre. Well, no, it's not. If you look at the years down the bottom, they're not in order. Okay, so you've got to make sure, always make sure that down the bottom here is in order. So we're going to come into here, and I'm going to go for sort by. Sort by decade, calendar year is a better one to go for. And there we are. And it's now starting at 9, going down to 0. So go back on 3 dots and go sort ascending. And there you are. We've gone from there. And in order to go back up to your decades, you can drill back up again, and that will take you back up. And you can click at any point. As long as you click that down arrow first, you can click on any point, and it will take you and show you how that decade by year works. Okay, right. How am I doing? As always, I am running out of time. I'm really good at doing that. So let's go on to let's go on to. I am going to go on to another page for a second. I've got one more. I've got an important thing to show you about calendars. So one of the other questions I had was how does temperature vary over the year? So that they think that's nice and easy. I can do that. Let's bring in a line chart. Let's also, I'm going to click on the background just for a second, and I'm just going to bring in a page background again. Oh, it's transparent again. There we go. Right. I like my clouds. So I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to bring in my temperature like that. And I'm going to bring in my my month name across my axis because I like January, February. That's what people want to see. And I'm again going to bring in my values, my max temperature, but I don't want it summed. I want the average. Thank you very much. And the minimum, I also want the average. Okay. Well, that doesn't look right. Okay. Because July, August, September, well, that's because we've sorted by temperature. We haven't sorted by months. Well, that's fine. So let's go and sort by. Well, let's start by sorting ascending. And let's go and sort by months. And there we go. April, August. It's alphabetical because it's text. Okay. So what I'm going to do, so I need to say, well, no, that's not how I want you sorted. If I get back into the date calendar here, there's a couple of things to do to a date calendar that we haven't done, and the details are in the blog post that I showed, and I will link up to it in my posts after this. Is one, that month name. We need to sort it by something else. Okay, so I've picked the month name column. I go to column tools, and I go sort by, and I go sort by month number. It will do nothing here, right? But when I get back into my visual, there you are. It has now sorted my months into the right order. Okay, so if that's new to you, the two things I want you to remember today is create a calendar, or three things: create a calendar table. 2, turn off auto date time. And 3, you've got to sort your months. You've got to sort your weekdays. You've got to sort anything that's text. If you're expecting it to be in a different order, you need to create a column that will give you the sort order. So that's how we've done those ones there. Okay. Now I can, to add in, just to show we can do some other visuals just for a second, I'm going to bring in a slicer and I'm going to put in decade. Now, because it's a number, it comes up with a number slicer, which allows you to pick a different range. You might try and say, well, that's not what I want. I want a tick list, thank you very much, or a drop down. So in the top right-hand corner, there is a drop down here, and it says, here are the options I'm going to give you. List is the default. Okay, so there you are, there you are. I can go for a list and I can go, so they're 2000, 1900, and you can click through them and you can see how it changes over time. And depressingly, there's 2020, because you've only got half a year, it's not working. Well, it's not got the whole year's there worth yet. But there you are, I can go back to the previous decade, and there we go. We are over 20 on our temperature in July and August. Whereas if you go back to the 1960s, we are definitely below. Okay. So so we've managed to bring in some data, or we've managed to bring in a calendar and relate them, and we've managed to plot them. Okay. What I haven't done, by the way, you can't do it in Power Query, you have to do it in here. What I haven't done is save it. Okay, so do make sure you save. The other nice feature before we move on to the other report is to double click on the background. And if you double click on the background, it will do you what's called Q&A. And this asks you a question. Now, it tries to be natural language. It is improving the whole time, but this still is a very new feature. Okay, so I can put in list Whitby data with, I just spelt Whitby wrong. List dates with highest max temp. This date and max temp. And they are in my data currently. Okay, so by asking a question, it comes up with an answer. Right? It's not the best answers in the world, and they're not the best questions in the world, but they work. Now, I've realised I've the scroll bar. Okay, by the way, if you ever do a live meeting, there's a scroll bar in the questions, and it's proving hard work to scroll down. Let me just. I've realised I've missed a whole lot of questions. My apologies, guys. Wow, it really isn't letting me scroll down. Maybe if I type something in the bottom, it will scroll all the way down to the bottom. Ah, Fernando, I'm booking you. I'm booking you for all of these sessions because you have just asked the right question. Sorry, I'm going to go back up to Rose's. Is it better to create our date table with Power Query or with DAX using calculated tables? Okay, Rose, really good question. There is the best calendar is a calendar that already exists and you just load. So if your company, if your data warehouse or whatever already has a calendar, please use it. The reason I do it in DAX is it's easier to understand. If I'm creating a report, I do it in Power Query because actually it only then gets run once when your data is refreshed. Okay, so if it's you looking after it and you're happy to look after it, Power Query if you haven't already got the data existing. If you're asking other people to look after your report and you're starting with Power Query, starting with Power BI, do it in DAX. It's easier. So that answers, I'm hoping answers Rose's question and Mike's question. Data Studio is strictly cloud-based. I think Google Data Studio is strictly cloud-based, and Power BI, I haven't put this on the cloud yet. Okay. Do we still need to mark the calendar table as a date table? Yes, Fernando, and I haven't done it. And you're perfectly right to point it out. I should have marked it as a date table. I will do that in a second. Can you do both drill through and a drill down at the same time? No. Brandon, let me show you what a drill through is in a moment, and then I'll show you what a drill and drill down. They're slightly different, although they're using similar phrases. They're not quite the same. And I think Fernando's pointed you to a post there from Microsoft. Okay, right. So wait a minute. Well, where am I? Date calendar. So wait a minute. Let me quickly finish this Q&A. I'm then going to click on the button there, and it makes it into a visual. I can then decide I want that to be maybe a multi-row card. They're quite pretty. You could have had multiple things in there, and it's sorted it out for you. Going back to our date table. Okay, yes, this should be marked as a date table. On the table tools, there is mark as date table. It makes some of the relationships behave a little bit better, and it stops background tables being formed. So mark as date table. It asks you which column it has your date in it. There is only one in this particular table, but some calendars have multiple dates in them. And then we click OK. The difference you will see is next to the date in your one there will be a little box rather than a blank. Okay, and any relationships that you put that date to another date, that date won't have a hierarchy hidden calendar behind it. Okay, which is all important. It's important to get those right. So I put in answers for my dates of my average of max time over. So if I draw back up again, it'll show me over decades. One of the extra things you could add in is put in a trend line, and I could add a trend line, which depressingly does show you that the world's temperature is going up. Okay. So, and those trend lines are worth playing with. I haven't got time, sadly, but it's quite a good one if you've got enough data to show it. But what I want to take you to is my version of this report, which I'm hoping is here. So, my apologies, I'm about to run over, but I'm only going to be about 5-10 minutes, I promise. So I have created a version. I added a theme. Okay, on the view ribbon, there's themes, there's pretty colors. I added a different one for this report. And I've got my year pattern. Now what I've done is on my year pattern, I've put the decades as the different lines. Okay, so you can see actually over time they're depressingly going up. Okay. But behind the scenes, I'm just going to show this. I'm not going to totally explain it. I possibly need to do that in a slightly more advanced session. So I'm going to go back to home for a second, and I'm just going to do a transform data. So the transform data, I have gone through the list of data that was there, and I've brought in the station name, latitude and longitude, and where in the country it is, where in the UK it is. I took the report, the one which I've just built with you guys. Okay, so this is the columns you expected, and I went back into the source, and I brought in a parameter. Okay, and that's what this parameter is up here. So if I click on here, wait a minute, click on the cogwheel, that shows it a bit better. I brought in a new parameter to say, bring in the station name. Give us that. You're going to give that to me? There we go. Bring in the station name as part of the URL, because that's how this Met Office data works. That's a station name followed by the word data.txt. So that's quite nice and easy to construct. I then took the data in here from this station list. I did it again, and I ended up the lowercase version of it. I ran my function, which gave me a table, and expanded it out. Okay, if people are interested, I will do another session another time that takes that into more details, but that allows me to run that little bit of code over all of the stations and add them together. Okay, so that you end up with a station list and I end up with station data. And when I come back into here, I go and have a look at my relationships. That one shouldn't be in here, but never mind. I should have marked that one as not loading, but that's beside the point. It's come through. And I end up with 3 tables. These are the tables I'm really interested in. But I've got a date, my station data, and my station list. Okay, so this is ignoring that one over there for a second, which I perhaps should explain to you how to get rid of. Let me just quickly get rid of that one. So I'm just going to do a right click on get station data, and I'm just going to turn off enable load. So it'll get refreshed. I doubt it's going to break something in my report, but never mind. Now when I come back into my report, it'll take a moment to refresh. But there you are, it's gone now. Okay, do yourself a favor, lay this out so that it makes sense and is on the left-hand side, top left, because that's where people will look. If I now come back in, so I've now got a station list and station data. And if I look at my data, here you are, I've got stations and I've got a min and a max and a date, etc. And hence I've managed to, yeah, that one visual is going to be wrong, but I'm not going to fix that. So what I want to quickly show you is bringing in a calendar. Sorry, Emma, I am running late, aren't I? Give me 5 minutes, guys.
Don't worry, Laura, you're all good.
See, Emma's done this with me before. She knows I talk too much. We're gonna do a calendar. We're gonna do a pretty map because hey, that's what we should be doing. Yes, Fernando. I'm sorry. I'm just quickly looking. Fernando. 20 degrees C. Actually, it's not bad today here in the UK. Yes, it does work fine making the calendar table not as a date market as date table. It works fine, but it's better practice to mark it as a date table. You'll end up with a better model, okay, which possibly will be more efficient. Marco and Alberto probably can give you better reasons why, but to tell you the truth, if the Italians tell you to do it, you do. They're not quite the mob, but I'm going with that as an idea. So I'm going to bring in. I've got a map, so I'm going to go for. Now there is a new map, and the only reason I'm not using it is because I don't know it well enough, and that is the Azure map. It's got some lovely features. Some people have put out some really good blog posts on it, so that is worth looking out for. So my data here, you've got a whole lot of fields you could fill in here. So if I go to my station list, you'll see I've got a latitude and longitude. So I can bring in my latitude and put it into there. My longitude and I put it into there. And there you are, it's worked out, we're in the UK. If you get them around the wrong way, it doesn't work. I've been there too many times. So you go through there. Now, I've got lots of little dots in there. And I've got some station data, my maximum and my minimum. So let's go for where is the coldest in the UK? Okay, perhaps I should have data from Mexico. That might be happier. But anyway, where is the coldest? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our format, and I'm going to go for my data colors. Now, this is one of my favorite topics, and I don't do enough on it. Conditional formatting. So anything that can be conditional formatted, they've added this little FX button next to it. So you can click into there. We can do cold. Okay. So color scale, look, we can go from light blue to, let's go for from that nice light blue, and let's not have that greeny color. Let's go for a custom color of a really nice blue. So there we are, cold. And that's the wrong way around, isn't it? So that one's going to be the highest. That should be the dark blue. Yeah, I was going to get this wrong. That's going to be the dark blue. This is going to be a light blue. And we are going to go for color scale, count of latitude. That's not going to make sense. We're going to go for station data minimum, right? And the summarization is we're going to go for the minimum of the minimum, right? And there we are. We've got colors there. I am then going to click OK. And there you go. There is a map of the UK. The dots all moved, but I'm sure the map didn't. A map of the UK with all the stations on it. Now I can do things like tooltips. So when I hover over that there, it tells me the latitude and longitude. Well, that's no use. So what I want to do is I want to bring in the station. So I'm going to bring in the station name. So now when I hover over a dot, there you are, it tells me it's going to go to a place I can't pronounce. Let's go to there, I can do that one. Wick Airport. Okay, so weirdly, they appear to be not so, we appear to have had the colder temperatures up here. I thought Scotland should have had them, but obviously not. Cornwall, it's our place where we pretend is warm. And I can bring in, so I could also have brought in into the tooltips the minimum of the minimum. So therefore I can come onto this one here and see that Braemar, well, guess that's what it's called, that they went down to minus 8.6. Okay, right, how are we doing? Oh, no more questions. I can see. So the one thing I haven't done, which I will do very briefly, is I haven't published. Okay, so if I go to publish, which is on the home ribbon, there's a publish button. You do need to be logged in. You need to save your report. And it then should ask you where you want to publish it to. And it'll ask you for what location. So I'm going to go for alpha. These are all your workspaces. If you don't have a license, you will get a My Workspace, okay, and you won't get anything else. If you have a license, or no, if you need a license, even if you're on a premium client. So I'm going to go to alpha. I'm going to pick select. And what it'll do is it will head off and publish it for you. It takes a little while to publish it. It then gives you a link to be able to link to it. Something to be aware of. However you saved your report, so whichever page you were on, whatever filters you had applied, they will be applied to your published report. So it is worth making sure you're on the right page, you've got the right filters applied, etc., etc. But here it is in Power BI in the service. I can click into here. I put in multiple fields. So this is another version of drill down, a hierarchy, is that I put in multiple fields into this slicer so that I can turn around and show me all the Cornish ones, show me the data of Cornwall or the Midlands, or I can say just turn off Midlands and just give me Oxford. Okay, so there we are. Oxford is not getting warmer, by the looks of things. Okay, so that's that one there. Now, I did say I'm gonna go back into here. I did promise somebody that I was going to do a drill through. So let me just think for a second. If I do a drill through onto here, that I bring in into my drill through field, I bring in the station. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a table into here that's got in it a station and a region. That'll do. Okay. So that what I've done there is I've brought in a drill through field. I'm then going to back on my map page just for a second. I don't think I can do it off one of these. I don't think these will do it. No, I don't think they will. I don't think I can do it off a map, but I think I can do it off a table. And I can bring in my stations. If I do a right click on there, so I've gone for Chivenhouse, Cornwall, and I do a drill through, and it asks me which page I'm going for. I can click onto there, and what it does is it takes this page and it filters this page to match what I had right clicked on to get that one. Hence, this little table here only has one station in it. Okay, so there are some really nice, clever things you can do with drill throughs. I did a video on my YouTube channel creating a drill through button so that I'm not going to do it now, I promise, Emma, it's all right. That you can pick one in here, and that will highlight a button that you could then click and take you to a report. Okay, so that's what a drill through is. I've forgotten who asked me through that. Was that Brandon, I think? So to answer your question whether you can do a drill through and a drill down at the same time, no, I don't think you can, but you can do some interesting things with drill throughs and keeping filters and things like that. So possibly a combination of it. Okay, so somewhere I have a PowerPoint presentation on a desktop somewhere. This is the problem with multiple desktops. There we are. There we go. Okay, so pointing you back to the only one I haven't gone here is Chris Hamill's, which I showed up. Guy in the Cube. This it's only showing pictures of Patrick. That's a bit weird. SQLBI, Marco and Alberto. They really do know their stuff. I have some videos. I have a blog. My videos. I'm Laura GB. Hatful of Data is my source. Okay. Thank you for staying. Thank you for staying over time. My apologies, I'm a quarter an hour late. Please give back feedback. Okay, here's our event code 11588. That's the QR code. If not, go for the AKMS address at the bottom there. Okay, and if you want me to do something different in Power BI, please let me know. Okay, I really am open to doing something different and something with some different data. We've had a play with some weather data now. We've had a play with some task data and some sales data. So thank you very much, ladies and gents. Have I missed it? Have I missed another question? Is there a question I haven't answered? Can you publish anonymous to web? Yes, but please don't. Okay, unless it really is anonymous. Okay, if this one, I'm perfectly happy to do anonymous because it really is anonymous data. It's public data. Please do not publish anonymous to web. there are ways of doing it with any of your company data, because you publish it anonymous to web. You then and Google will find it, Bing will find it, they will search for it. Your text and your reports become search terms. People can find it. Okay, there are some amazing ones. How would you collaborate on a presentation, and would you use copy version tabs? Or I would use separate reports, and I would then publish those separate reports into the same Power BI app, so that multiple people. So I would do one publish, and then use that one data set into multiple reports, and then publish that into one app. That sounds like I need to do a video on that one. That's quite a nice one, actually. Whoever you are, anonymous, asking about the collaborate, I will check, see if anybody else has already done it. If not, I will put together something in the next week. Okay, so and I will put that out on Twitter under Laura GB. Okay. Any more questions, ladies and gents? Anybody still here?
I can't see any more questions coming through. Lots of good feedback, which is great. Someone asked if there are contact details to ask questions, but I guess that would be on your Twitter.
Yeah, find me on Twitter. To tell you the truth, if you search for Laura GB Power BI, you will find me. Okay. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm on. Actually, you don't want to email me. I read Twitter more than I read my email, which is a bad thing to admit, but it's true. Okay. So do and a DM. Yes, I will get a message request from you. And as long as you want, I got offered marriage this week via Twitter. So hey, as long as you aren't doing that, I won't block you. I promise.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay. So and let me know what questions you've got. And we'll come up with them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending, for all your great questions, your feedback, for following along. Please fill out the survey. It won't take more than a couple of minutes, I promise, and it would be very much appreciated. And hope to see everyone at the next Reactor event. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, guys.